So in the off season, God bless the PLL for giving out their top 50 players. So we're gonna start off at the very bottom, below the bottom actually. We're gonna start with some people who are missing. My number one dude, who I was like, how the fuck is he not there, is Jules Henningberg. Henningberg last year in 2019 had 21 goals, fourth in the league, 33 points, fifth in the league, tied for fifth in the league. I didn't really understand how he wasn't there. A lot of people were replying to the Twitter post that asking who was snubs. Brad Smith, 15 points last in the 2020, 8 goals, 7 assists, pretty fucking good. Connor Fields also. Connor Fields, a sick 2019, a pretty dismal postseason and a pretty dismal 20 season. 33 points, 22 goals, and 19. Tied for fifth in points. I think he was third in goals. So, fucking really good 19. A little dump off towards the end, though. Kind of more understandable. We have Ryan Drenner as well. Ryan Drenner, 18 goals, 1 2-pointer, with for 21 points, 19. No points in the postseason though, and only 3 goals in 2020. So he dropped off as well. And the last one is Jared Newman. He had, he had a really good 2020 gig, 16 ground balls and 7 calls turnovers. Um, Amongst all the other people that had for 2020. 16 ground balls is more than good, especially compared to the other players on the list. That's some of the better numbers overall. I'd be tied for third, I believe. And then 7 calls turnovers, pretty average amongst these top 20 players. He definitely could have been a player up there. I think it's just due to he's been super consistent. He had 5 2-pointers in 2019. He's someone who I definitely could have understood had been added. So we'll start off with at 50, and I'll mark it off at every 5 or so. So we have Brent Adams, Redwoods offensive midfielder. So he, not bad. 11 points 2019, 7 points in the postseason, 6 points last year, mainly all coming from goals. Not bad, not great. 50 is pretty giving. I probably wouldn't have put him there, but God bless for him. We have Dom Alexander next, defensive midfielder for the Archers. He was one of the last 3 finalists for defensive midfielder of the year, so he definitely had to be on the list. I'm surprised he's not a little bit lower on the list, or higher on the list, I should say, towards the lower numbers. Strange how that works, but on the list nevertheless. Jake Ficarro, who I thought definitely should have been higher on this list. Attackman last year, midfielder this year at 27 points last year, and 3 2-pointers last year as a attackman. Crazy shit, you don't really see that too often. The only other person who really does that is Justin Gutterding. And then last year had 3 goals, 2 2-pointers, 5 goals overall, 10 points for 2020. Surprised that he wasn't a little bit higher on this list. Next, we have Connor Farrell, a guy who really picked it up, proved that he could really be a number 1 face-off guy. Last year, regular season, 55% face-off, and the postseason had a 48% face-off. And then last year, really stepped it up, 62%, had a really good 2020. We're looking forward to him in 2021, seeing if he can keep it up. Next, we have Jake Bernhardt, a defensive midfielder for the Whipsnakes. He actually did really well on the offensive side of the ball, too, in 2019. I think that's really what got him to this spot. He had some good lights. There's a couple Bernhardts on this list, that's for sure. Next, we have Jack Huncannon, goalie for the Atlas. His save percentages got better in 2020. Not great in the postseason, about 50%. Not great, not horrible. But the save percentage in the regular season, 53. So kind of highlights his improvement from 2019 to 2020. After that, we have Jordan McIntosh. First year on the Archers, second year on the Water Dogs. Had 13 points in 2019, 11 of them being goals. Last year had 6 goals, 6 points. He's a great offensive midfielder. He's super fun to watch. Could have seen him being a little bit lower on this list, but good for him for making it. Cade Vaporanporst, I totally thought that he was going to be higher on this list. So he had two 2-pointers in 2019. Hasn't really had too many points since, but his caused turnovers and ground balls in the 2020 season. I guess it wasn't he wasn't phenomenal in 2019 stat wise, but in 2020, I mean 21 ground balls and 12 caused turnovers. That's really fucking good. 21 ground balls is really fucking good. I believe that's second best. Yeah, that's second best on this list, and the guy who's fucking first best is in the top 5. So, could have seen him a lot higher on this list, but you can't really complain too much being in the top 45. Next, we have Paul Rabel, someone who I personally would not have really put on this list. I get it; you have to put on him on here for the fact that he had 10 goals, one 2-pointer, 11 assists, and 23 points in 2019. You can't dismiss the fact that he had a really good 2019, a pretty good 2019 season. Um, and a pretty decent postseason too. 2 goals, 2 assists, 4 points, not half bad. But his 2020 season, mind to be that it is only 2 weeks, 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, whatever he played. 5 points, 1 goal. That's not gonna get it done. That's a small sample size. Paul Rabel at like 42. And then at 41, we have the first goaltender to make the list, Tim Troutner, obviously goaltender for the Redwoods. Another one of second goaltender to make it. So goes Jack McCannon and then Tim Troutner. Not too surprised to see it go in that fashion. I personally would have put it in that fashion as well. I think they got the goaltenders order right in this. So we have both of them had a 53 in the first season, although Troutner 59 in his postseason. That's fucking sick. And then 56 for 2020. That's about the same, 1.1 percentage off. That's nothing too crazy. So both of those goaltenders pretty neck and neck, both young, both great. If the Atlas can really get their shit going, I think that could be a great rivalry between those two goaltenders particularly. Next, to start off at the top 40, we have Kieran McArdle. He was on the Atlas last year. He's on the Water Dogs this year. He's an attackman. 12 goals, 13 assists, pretty balanced. 25 points in 2019. In 2020, 8 goals, 6 assists, 14 points, pretty fucking good. He's a guy who you always kind of have to look out for. He's a pretty balanced overall attackman. Um, you notice him when he's out there for fucking sure. Whether it's his great dishes or whether it's his great scoring ability. You always notice him when he's out there. Speaking of people who you notice when they're out there, is fucking Marcus Holman. Obviously, the attackman on the Archers. He had a sick 2019 season. 21 goals, two pointers, 32 points in that season. That's fucking nuts. And then in the postseason, had 10 goals, 1 assist for 11 points. That's even crazier. And 6 goals for 7 points in 2020. Not fantastic, like especially not compared to his 2019 postseason, but that's off the fucking charts. Marcus Holman, could have seen him being a little bit higher on this list. Not surprised that he's top 40. Still fucking great. There's a lot of good players on this list. Definitely deserves to make it. Probably could have seen him a little bit higher. The next couple guys, I think he could have been over, but nonetheless, we have Connor Kelly next. Chaos the first season, Water Dogs this season, offensive midfielder, 10 goals, 18 points in the first season last year. He had in the 2020 had 5 goals, 2-pointers for 10 points. Pretty good productivity out of him, especially being on the Water Dogs. Water Dogs didn't have the greatest season. They had lackluster in either the first or the second half. Couldn't really put together a complete game. Although I think Connor Kelly, as well as the other individuals on this list, were great highlights for them, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, definitely got to get it together. Next, we have Brian Costabile, someone who I think is pretty good at his number. He's at 37. I think that's really good for a rookie season. Had 6 goals, 1 2-pointer for 9 points. He was a two-way guy. He was playing offensive minutes and defensive minutes. He was out there for a while. He'll be great for years to come. That's a great pickup for the Atlas, not only to transition him into, a guy who they can rely on more two-way, but also a guy who they can rely on as, everyone's seeing it coming. Paul Rabel starting to face his way out, whether that be in the next 2 years or in the next 10 years. Either way, we all know that his time must come. He's an older guy, and I think that this is a great, I don't want to say replacement, but he's a great addition to the midfield that that they could use, especially as some major pieces leave. After that, we have another offensive midfielder or another midfielder in Miles Jones, a Chaos last year, a Redwood this year. I think that people still don't know how to use Miles Jones. I don't even know if Miles Jones knows how to use Miles Jones. 2019, 18 points, nothing crazy, 6 goals, 1 2-pointer, whatever. 2020, 4 goals, 2 2-pointers. The ball just seems to get stuck in his stick. He's a big guy. He needs like those alleyway dodges, just running downfield, running through guys. I think that he could be better used. I'm not sure if it's something that the coaches just can't seem to get his scheme going or what it may be. Maybe it was the missing personnel the Redwoods had in Jules Henningberg. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I think that Miles Jones is still not putting out 100%, yet he is still 36 on this list. So I could only see him really going up if people start figuring out how to, I don't want to say how to coach him, but how to use him in their schemes. Up next, one of my personal favorite players to watch is Eric Law. Eric Law has been known for someone that just kind of knows where to be on the field at certain times. Obviously, the attackman for the Atlas had 20 goals in 2019, had 5 goals last year, 2 assists, 7 points in his 2020 campaign. Eric Law was one of the few highlights every single year for the Atlas. Him overall is he's a fantastic guy to watch. Not super flashy, he's just a guy that you always know. He's always moving. He's kind of like that guy in the front of the net in hockey, kind of like a Sidney Crosby, for example. You never really see him, or an Anders Lee if you're an Islanders fan. You don't really see him making crazy moves all the time, but you'll see him in the front of the net, just be like, how the fuck does he know, like, exactly where to be? Especially, when I think of Sidney Crosby, I think of all his fucking garbage goals that he just is standing in front of the net. It's like, how did he know he was supposed to be there right there? And that's fucking Eric Law for you. Next, we have Matt McMahon, a defenseman for the Archers. He had a really good, he had a really good last year and this year. 23 ground balls last year, 10 this year, 12 close turnovers this year. 12 close turnovers this year, that's really fucking good, man. That's one of the best in the league. Matt McMahon is a real fucking staple for the Archers on that defensive end. Sticking with the Archers, next we have Will Manny. Will Manny, obviously the fucking one of the sickest attackmen in the league. Last year, 21 goals this year, fucking 10 goals, 14 assists, 14 points. So he's obviously the fucking goal scorer, the guy who Grant Ment and Thomas Schreiber got the fucking ball to. Will Manny is, to say the least, he is phenomenal. The whole Archers offense is just phenomenal to watch. But Will Manny is just so fun to watch to put the fucking ball in the back of the net, man. 13 goals in the 2019 postseason. This dude knows how to fucking score. Next, we have Ryder Garnsey for, obviously, the Redwoods attackman. I have a love-hate relationship with Ryder Garnsey. 14 goals in 2019, 6 goals in the postseason, 10 in the 2020 campaign. It's tough watching him. Sometimes I feel like he also gets the ball caught in his stick. Not sure if it's a Redwoods thing or if it's a Ryder thing. Either way, he'll do much better next year when Jules is back, when Cav is working with Jules. That always seems like it makes it easier for Ryder to get open. He can't be... He's not the dude who... it really works better if there's two guys who they can kind of work the offense through, depending on the game plan. Usually it doesn't work best when it's just always going through the same guy. Cav isn't a great guy to run the game through. Ryder is a little bit better, and Jules is a little bit better than that. So having that option to switch around makes it a lot easier. I think it was Pedersen came in last year, number 40 for the Redwoods. Did a decent job, trying to replace as much as he can. But I think Ryder is only going to keep getting better. He was a scratch. I mean, he wasn't even a fucking player week 1 in 2019 and ended up with 14 goals, 10 assists, 24 points in 2019. So, that's a great look on him. Sticking with the Redwoods for the next couple. We have Eddie Glazner, one of the most cerebral players in the game. Had a great interview on Spittin' Chicklets last year. His numbers aren't fantastic when you look at him. 9 calls, turnovers, 9 ground balls, 5 calls, turnovers. He had the same numbers in 2019, and he had 4 and 4 in the postseason. He is not extremely talented, I guess you would say, not extremely athletic when you look at some of the other guys, but he is definitely one of the smartest players in the game. When you hear people mic'd up, it is fantastic. They shouldn't even have fucking commentation when they're on the defensive side of the ball. They should just fucking log on to Eddie Glazner. He's fantastic. Next, we have Sergio Perkovic, someone who I think is only just learning how to fucking play offense. He's a bit of a two-way guy as well. He had 9 goals last year. He had 6 two-pointers in 2020, 15 points. That's a fucking hell of a season right there. And I think he's just learning how to fucking do that shit. In the first couple games, you were kind of kind of. Same thing with Miles Jones. Same thing with the entire Redwoods. And then as time went on, you really got to see him learn a little bit more how to use his body, how to use his skill set. So I think those two midfielders for the Redwoods are only going to get better next year. Next, we have Jesse Bernhardt. His first year in the league had a real big impact for the Chaos. Again, not crazy numbers, but super cerebral. 9 and 4 when ground balls, turnovers, caused turnovers. Jesse Bernhardt has definitely got to look out for next year. I'd expect him to have fucking crazy numbers next year. Next, we have Jack Rowlett, someone who I definitely could have seen being a little bit higher on this list. Obviously, the defenseman for the Chaos. He's the guy who, I don't even need to tell you his stats, but he's the guy who, when you have that number 1 dude and you're like, oh, who are we going to put up against him? It's Jack Rowlett. It's, second thought it. There is no, it is Jack Rowlett. Coming to, I think this is our first long stick midfielder. We have Scott Ratliff. Scott Ratliff, fucking slide to Scott Ratliff. Scott Ratliff had 2 goals, 2 assists in 2019. 2 goals, 1 2-pointer, 3 assists in 2019 postseason. 3 goals, 3 assists in fucking 2020. When Scott Ratliff is coming down the field, you have to fucking slide. And he's got a great little rat tail, too. Oh my god, Scott. If I was an Archers fan, I would love to be an Archers fan, man. I mean, there's no part of the Archers that you're like, maybe the goaltenders between Adams and Gittleman. I would like to see them pick one or the other. But I mean, McMahon, Ratliff, Manny, fucking Schreiber, Holman, Amends. I mean, where do you even? I guess they could use a. You have Kelly at faceoff. Could probably use a different faceoff guy. I think he splits with someone else. I forget his name, but the Archers are. Oh my god, man, it's fucking team to come. After that, where are we now? I mean, we're at 26 right now. Ty Warner. Surprised it goes Ty Warner, then Jack Neer. Surprised it went in that way because Ty Warner won Short Stick D of the Year. Not sure exactly what that says. Comparing their stats, Ty had a much better 2019 at 18-5, Neer at 7-1, ground ball cost turnovers, and then last year, Ty just had no caused turnovers in 2020. Had 16 ground balls. Near, on the other hand, 11 and 6. Maybe it was the no caused turnovers. Either way, I mean, they're neck and neck. You really can't pick one over the other. Uh, Ty Warner and Jack Near for you, you know. Next, we have Tucker Durkin. Tucker Durkin, one of the few things that you can really say on the Atlas is good on the defensive end besides Jack Concannon. Nothing too great on them. A lot of average, I guess. But Tucker Durkin was one of the guys who you really like to see. Had a really good 2019 when it comes down to ground balls. 2020 not so much, but 5 calls turnovers, nothing to laugh at. He doesn't get too much help. Their LSM, Craig Schick, not bad, not great. There's room to improve there. There's room to improve at almost anywhere for the fucking Atlas. It's tough to see them back-to-back years be bad, but they're not horrible. It's just they're a strange group. I think it's coaching, but what do I know? Next we have Rob Pennell, another Atlas guy, someone who we all kind of thought would be great, and I think that he was just really good. Not to throw any shade at anyone, but I thought he was. We all thought he was gonna be a top 4 or 5 player. We thought he was gonna be where fucking Zed Williams is on this list, but instead he's sitting in those low 20s, 6 goals, 9 assists, 15 points. I'm in love with him and Eric Wolf playing together, but nothing too crazy. Definitely expect more from him next year. I think he expects more from himself next year. I think the entire Atlas roster expects more from themselves next year. Next, we have Bryce Young, defenseman for the Whipsnakes. Had a crazy fucking 2019 season. 34 ground balls, 12 caused turnovers, 9 ground balls. This year, 3 caused turnovers. Him, along with a couple other guys who we'll get to on this list. The Whipsnakes are overall just fucking loaded. Next, we have Trevor Baptiste back to another faceoff guy. Definitely, I think they also got the faceoff men in the correct order as well, going from Farrell to now Trevor Baptiste. So Baptiste, 64% last year, was definitely the best faceoff man. 54 to their postseason and 2020 season. Not bad, not great, pretty middle of the road, but that 2020 definitely had him up, and he has a good offensive capability. He does a good job of, creating fast breaks and getting the ball to attackmen or midfielders. Overall, definitely the second best faceoff man in the league. Connor Farrell definitely there, and then I think after that you have Tom Kelly. After that, there's not too much. Greg Relian, that's really the next guy, but he's retired. R.I.P. Not R.I.P. R.I.P. to his fucking whatever. Next we have Justin Gutterding, Chrome, Attackman. Justin Gutterding. He might be my favorite. This is where now at the top 20. He has to be my favorite player on the Chrome. I like Jordan Wolf. We'll get to Jordan Wolf in a little bit. Justin Gutterding, though, it's the ability for him to use the other team against themselves. For him to open, he plays he looks like a fucking midfielder, and he takes shots, and you're like, oh, this guy definitely plays midfield, and you're like, how is he playing attack? It is just unreal, the capability for this guy to score. Had 35 points in 2019, 19 goals, 1 2-pointer. Last year I messed up on his stats a little bit, but had 16 points. And 10 goals, I think. Just fucking something else, man. Just an absolute fantastic guy to watch. he when you just look at him, when you look at Justin Gooderding play, it really is just the creativity of being able to get his hands free, time and space, even if it's the split second. You can't give him a second with no one on his hands and a clear shot of the net, because it's gonna go in. It's gonna go in. Speaking of guys who have a crazy shot, we have Mike Chanenchuk at 19. Whipsnake's offensive midfielder. If you don't know him, he's a 2-point king. Had 7 in 2020, 3 in the postseason. 7 in 2019, 3 in the postseason, 2 in 2020. I don't want to say a letdown in 2020, but definitely a reduction in production. A reduction in production. But you're gonna see. I mean, there are so many whipsnakes on this fucking list, man. I mean, there's only so much ball and only so much time in the game. I don't think it was a reduction in Mike Chanenchuk. I think it was just a fucking. It's just like a spread the wealth type of thing. Mike Chanenchuk, still king of the 2-pointers. I don't care about Sergio Perkovic, still king of the two-pointer. I still got to give it to him, but we'll see. 2021, who knows? Maybe Surge is going to surge. Next, we have Curtis Dixon, Chaos. Personally, my fucking favorite player on the Chaos. I love Curtis Dixon, man. 12 goals, 6 assists, 18 points. Curtis Dixon is just as phenomenal to watch, man. Having had not even seen any of him in 2019, being able to see him in 2020 was just great. His ability to score is phenomenal. He's a great attackman, has great inside rolls. He rolls like a fucking sushi maker. Next we have Will Haas Chrome, defensive midfielder. Will Haas, he's a defensive midfielder. 4 goals in 2019, 3 goals in 2020. 3 goals in 2020, that's more than Paul Rabel. You look at that, 4 points. I mean, he's playing defense, has the offensive productivity of Paul Rabel. That's all I gotta say, man. But I do also have to touch on, I do have more to say, actually. 17 ground balls in 2019, 9 ground balls in 2020, 2 caused turnovers, not too shabby. Offensively, productive. Defensively, productive. A fucking beast. And this guy, I think, should have been much higher on the list. You look at the guy who's above him, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, when I just read you his stats, 40 ground balls, 40 ground balls in 2019, 23 caused turnovers. 23 caused turnovers. Who's next highest on that list for caused turnovers? On this is at 13. He has 10 more caused turnovers than the next guy. 23 caused turnovers 2019. 4-4 in the playoffs. 17, which I believe is tied for second. Only second to the guy who is above him, one of the two. And 9 ground balls. 17 ground balls, 9 caused turnovers. 9 caused turnovers, I believe, is third of all these guys on this list. I mean, it's a shame to put him outside of the top 15. We'll get to the other guys. One I definitely believe should be there. The other guy, yeah. I think that you probably could have switched those two. We're speaking about Garrett Epple, obviously, defenseman for the Redwoods. The only time that you kind of say, maybe Apple's not top 50 is when he's against Gaudette and loses his head. Next, we have John Haas on the Whips, offensive midfielder. A bunch of different Haases in the league. Never really saw that. 7 goals last year, 1 2-pointer, 13 points. 3 goals in 2019 postseason, but then last year, 13 points, matching his production in 2019, and a fraction of the games, 8 goals, 5 assists. John Haas trending upwards. He's the guy to look out for. Next, we have Ned Crotty. I think Ned Crotty missed like a game and a half in 2020. Had 27 points, 16 goals, 1 2-pointer in 2019. Not too much in the postseason, but had 3 goals, 7 assists in 2020. Definitely expect him to only get better going on. especially as he stays healthy. I believe that he had a shoulder issue, concussion issue, something like that. I can't particularly put my finger on it. And now we have the Water Dogs, one of the few career Water Dogs. And Zach Currier, offensive midfielder, 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points. Um, you know, again, Water Dogs, great offensively, not great defensively. Zach Currier was more than one of the best offensive guys for him. I think he's a little high on this list, small sample size. Got to give it to him, though. Definitely like seeing a Water Dog pretty high in this list. Makes me feel good. Grant Ament after that, I believe he's at 12. Surprised he was at 12. 6 goals, 14 assists, 20 points. I mean, that's an outrageous 2020. Again, one of those crazy rookies along with Costabile. I mean, it's not only the people who he works around and works with and the archers in general, but his vision of the field is just off the charts. And if you're like, oh, let's honor him because of his scoring capability, he'll move the ball on you. Oh, let's cover lanes, make sure that he doesn't blow by anybody, but, we're not rushing to slide. I don't want him to pass. He'll score the ball on you. It's one or the other, man. And either way, the ball's going in the back of the net, especially with the other scorers on that team, man. And right before we start rounding out this top 10, we have Matt Kavanaugh at 11. So, honestly surprised to see him this high. Glad to see that he's getting that respect. 14 goals, 24 points in 2019, 7, 4, and 11 in 2020. Sneaky good season. Redwoods in general aren't the craziest offensive team. I think Matt Cav definitely had it out for this 2020 season to be good without Jules, and I think he did just that. I mean, only expect him to be better when Jules comes back and Ryder is working better as well. I think all the Redwoods attackmen can only really go up. Same thing with the Atlas. I think they can really only go up. Maybe not Eric Law. He's a fucking tank. Everyone else, I think he can only really get better. Another goaltender to start off the top 10. This, I think, is in the correct order. It's super hard to take away from his season, but with a 55% in the 19, 59 in the postseason, and 63 in 2020, Kyle Bernlor comes in at 10. I think the reason why he's second is solely because of the amount of saves that the next goaltender makes. We'll get to that in a second, though. Next, we have Josh Byrne. Josh Byrne had a crazy 2020 season with 13 goals, 20 points. He had 17 goals the year before, had 2 and 2 in the postseason last year. He is a guy very dependable on the Chaos. It's great to watch Curtis Dixon play with him. I think the Chaos definitely have a lot of pluses on their side. I think as time goes on, it can only really get better for the Chaos compared to last season, specifically to those first 4 games. After that, Jordan Wolf. Jordan Wolf is fan-fucking-tastic. Really can't give him enough credit for the stuff that he does. While I love Justin Gutterding, Jordan Wolf is obviously one of the most balanced players in lacrosse. I mean, he regular season 19, 16, and 16, 20, 10, and 8. The only one that's a little lopsided is the 7 goals in fucking 1 or 2 games in 2019 postseason, where they didn't really have a postseason. I believe it was just a battle for last place. Jordan Wolf is just a tank. He's fantastic to watch, on ball and off ball. If you're a kid growing up and you're trying to become an attackman, I mean, there's so much to learn from Jordan Wolf. He's a great partner for fucking Gutterding. That's a pair that might be one of my favorite in the entire league. I mean, it's hard to say with all the great players on Archer, but Chrome overall, man, Just fantastic, fantastic players in Wolf and Gutterding. Next, the player who I definitely don't think should be top 10 is Matt Dunn. No offense to Matt Dunn, the stats are not fantastic. Yeah, I'm sure you can make their cerebral argument. The next highest cerebral players though are in the 30s. I don't think Matt Dunn makes that huge of a difference. When it compared to guys like Garrett Epple, I think Garrett Epples are just fucking workhorses. And not only workhorses, but I think that they're fucking highlight reel makers. Maybe that's why I think Matt Dunn should be lower, and maybe that's why personally I think people may think that I'm sleeping on Matt Dunn, but I just don't. I don't see him as a seventh highest in the league. Definitely would have him a little bit lower. No disrespect, but still like a top 20 player, but definitely close to that 20. Next we have Blaze Reardon, number one goaltender in the league. I mean, there's nothing to say about him, man. I mean, he had I think like 20 saves more than the next guy. 55, 41, 61 save percentage, 19, 20. 61% on like 100 something shots. I mean, Blaze puts the team on his back. There might not be a more important player to his team than Blaze is to the Chaos. And that's fact. Next we have Joe Nardella, the guy who probably makes me eat the last statement that I just made. 6 goals in 2019, 3 goals, 3 assists in 2020. Not only an offensive productive beast, but also not only consistency from 2019, 55% in the regular season, 55% in the postseason, pretty good, to fantastic at almost winning 3 out of 4 face-offs, 72%. That's almost unheard of. In 6 games, 72% against professionals. I mean, there's got to be something that Joe knows that we don't, because that's a speechless 2020. That's an MVP type season. How do you lose games when you get the ball 72% of the time? 3 out of 4 times you start with the ball when Joe Nardella is on the field. Crazy. I mean, it is. God, I can't even get into it anymore. I'm gonna start crying. It's just so fucking impressive, man. Number 4, the best LSM in the league, Michael Earnhardt. Not only is an offensive pressure with 3 2-pointers, 2 goals in 2019, but 2-pointers, 3 assists, 7 points in 2020, but also a fucking beast when it comes down to the face-off. When it comes down to winging the face-off acts with 26 ground balls in 2020. That's one more than he had in 2019, and there were way more games played in 2019. That also helps to the fact that Joe Nardella was 72%. That there's a bit of give and take with those two stats. 7 calls turnovers. You got to give it up to Michael Earnhardt. Whether or not his stats are, I don't want to say buffered, or not only if Joe Nardello's stats are buffered, but those two work super well together. It's fantastic to have an LSM to go with a face-off man like that. That's why I think that, ground balls are everything. Face-offs are huge. If you have the ball, you win the game. And I mean, that's why the Whips are back-to-back champions. Are because those two players, more than specifically, if there's even a word for that. Rounding out our top 3, if you haven't guessed it, he can't be in the top 2 because he didn't play in 2019. But goddamn, is it hard to not put him, in that fucking 1 or 2, man. Zed Williams, fucking Zeddy ball games, 20 goals in 2020. 20 goals. Next highest on this list, 13. 13. Had 20 goals. Next highest was 13 by Josh Byrne. Couple 12s in there. Not a whole lot of double digits. None hitting 20. I mean, he was just a fucking beast. There's nothing else to say other than that, man. There's not even a way to say how did you score his goals. Every way, every single way that you can imagine. Like, oh, was he a great catch and shoot? Yeah. Was he making crazy highlight reel games? Crazy highlight reel goals? Yes. Was he, garbage goals? Yes. Was it pick and rolls? Yes. Two-man games? Yes. I mean, it didn't matter, man. Zed was putting him on all games and put him in all goals in all sorts of ways. It was crazy. I mean, there's only 4, 5, 6 games that he played. So if you're looking to see some crazy fucking singular play, just fucking stare at Zeddy Ball game. And then the top two, who I think that this is the right order. We have Matt Rambo at 2, the best attackman in the league. Last year was the MVP. 19, 23, 42, 4, 7, 4, 3, and 7. 7, 18, and 25. That's for 2019 to 42, postseason 7, and 2020 25. Obviously, a lot less goals because it's at Williams, but just an overall beast. Not much I really have to say. I believe he's a 2-time MVP, 2-time champ, Matt Rambo. And at number 1, personally, my favorite player in the fucking league that's not a Redwood, Tom Schreiber on the Atlas. Again, if I wasn't a Redwoods fan, I'd be an Atlas fan. Best offensive midfielder. Had 37 points in 2019, who I thought was still the best player. 37 points, 15 goals, 2 of them being 2 with 2 2-pointers, 18 assists. It's really good for an offensive midfielder who's not on the field for every single possession. Had a 2019 postseason mainly because he got hurt. And then I believe he separated his shoulder or had a pretty bad AC sprain due to Garrett Epple, guy who definitely should have been higher on this list. And then in 2020, 12 goals, 4 assists, 16 points. Would love to see him get a fucking championship. Not sure there's really too much more to say. But, when I compare this to my own, goalies, I went Reardon, Blaze, Troutner, Buchanan, exactly how they had it. Face-off men, I had Nardella, Farrell, Baptiste, and Farrell probably switching more or less, so pretty close on that. Attackman, I had Rambo, Williams, Immense, Wolf, Pennell. I think they had Josh Byrne a lot higher than I did. I was kind of sleeping on Josh Byrne. Matt Cav, I didn't have that high. And then Curtis Dixon, yeah. Seems about right. Offensive midfielders, Schreiber had Channy a lot higher, I had Vaccaro a lot higher. I think Vaccaro I just had a lot higher because that transition from attack to midfielder really showing that he can play anywhere. Miles Jones I had pretty high, Ned Crotty I had pretty high. Let's see. Zach Currier I just don't think I had too high, just because he had just had the one season. 20 points though. That's very good 2020 with a limited amount of games. John Haas I had a lot lower. Good overall work. Maybe there's something that I just don't see when I watch him. Probably would have had him a little bit lower. I had Christian Mazzone on this list. Christian Mazzone was actually missing. That's another guy who you could have put up here. Dane Smith I also had on here. I love Dane Smith. I think that's a great name. And I just really like the Chaos in general. LSMs. Surprised there wasn't a John Sexton on this list. But, Michael Earnhardt, Ratliff, and then, Reese Eddy, Rylan Reese, you start to get into the, top 50 players. I don't think so. Still good players, though. And then the midfielders, you had Warner, Alexander, Near. Seems about right. Jack Near, Ty Warner. We have any other defensive middle? Will Haas. Mainly because of his offensive and defensive presence. Tom Alexander, yeah, about right. And then close to, Apple, I would have had CVR, fucking top 10 if I could have. Um, I don't want to, Matt Dunn probably would have been a lot lower. I didn't have Tucker Durkin as high. Yeah, I went Apple, CVR, Rowlett, Clays, Newman, Manley, Bernhardt. It's kind of hard to judge them right off the bat. I wasn't doing too thorough of a research when I was doing that. I was really just trying to remember everything that I watched over the summer, as well as looking at some stats. I think everyone, all the defensemen that made this list deserve to be on this list. Where they ended up on this list could change a little bit, but I think overall they got it pretty close. I don't think there's too much more to say, man. 45 minutes. Fuck, man. This is a pretty long episode. Thank you, PLL, for doing what you do. Keep it up, man. I really appreciate you giving me something to talk about. And fucking, until the next one, man. This is Bus Brains.